Welcome back to Coliseum Forum. Today we are going to set sail on the high seas with the creator of the very, very cool, very, very piratey Man Among Ye, Stephanie Phillips. How are you doing this evening?
Great. How are you doing?
Awesome. I'm talking to you about pirates. How else I can't think of a better way to spend the evening, right?
Yeah,
Um,
that's pretty good.
So let's just jump right into this. So, a Man Among Ye, I'm going to do the elevator pitch for you, and you tell me where I'm wrong.
Sure.
Follows the adventures of some of the most famous pirates, specifically lady pirates of the golden age of pirates. Right. I don't know if I could say pirates more in one sentence, but I'll try. We've got uh, Anne Bonny, Mary Read, and of course that in that triad we had Calico Jack, and that's kind of who we're following in the book here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, you nailed it. We are kind of blending with, I guess, a lot of the stuff I work on. I like blending fact and fiction. So, the interesting thing about working with the pirates has been so much of it is probably fictionalized already
Right.
because there's not a whole lot of written record about them. And, we were talking about you being in Tampa and me being from Tampa. And anyone in Tampa will know the Gasparilla Festival. And so, like, when I first started researching the pirates, I like started reading about Gasparilla, and they were in like all sources are like, Jose Gaspar probably was not a real person. This was like a legend that got like really fictionalized, and now is drunk fest on Bayshore Avenue, which is you know it's really interesting because you're dealing with something that's like really legend, and now we're kind of doing our own kind of legend with those characters and historical figures.
So, and obviously we're not going to get into the pedantics of that. Like, so I know a little bit about those people that we're writing about, and I did notice that you guys have made some changes. Specifically, like Mary Reed's a little bit younger. I'm trying not to spoil anything from the book, and Anne Bonny's sort of in that, like,
Yeah.
I don't know, mentor role. I guess like would kind of be like a pirate mentor. Uh, so
Bad influence is maybe another word.
that's probably much better way to describe that. So why did we? I mean, because there is so much ambiguity in that part of the history. In the golden age of pirates, it's 1650 to like 17 whatever. Um, why did you go like, okay, we're gonna do Anne Bonny, we're gonna do Mary Read, we're gonna do Calico Jack instead of just like, making somebody up?
Yeah, so I mean, we wanted the starting point to really be the history. So we wanted to play with, their backgrounds are at least what we kind of know from
Sure.
record, just like where Anne Bonny comes from. Her background of leaving a marriage to go sail with Rackham was kind of recorded in a few different places. So we kind of wanted the starting point to be the history, and then as any story, you kind of have to take liberties. We did that with Butcher of Paris as well, and part of that is just being like, you can't fit everything into the space sometimes.
Sure.
So something also becomes about being selective. And also just making sure, a story is being pushed forward. So it's not just a biography of Mary or Anne. It's also just like we want them to be doing something that readers are really invested in. So the pirate hunting was also very, very as accurate as I think we could make it as well, using actual pirate hunters from the era. Um, Charles Vane, who makes an appearance. So just kind of going through and using a lot of the history, though perhaps in a way that I guess the good thing about working with it is I don't think a lot of people can prove that it didn't happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So, for all we know, this is kind of the way a lot of those legends got recorded, anyways. Where it's like, we don't know if. I think part of the legend at some point says they were supposed to be hanged, but then said they were pregnant, and then like all traces of them are lost.
Yep.
And it's like, we don't know. Were they pregnant? Were they actually killed? Like, there's a lot of questions about what actually happened to them. So,
No,
um,
absolutely. That was something I was thinking about today because I went back and I reread the first three issues of Man Among Ye because obviously, I talk from an informed standpoint. But one of the things I was thinking about is like, okay, so we'll just pretend for argument's sake that Anne Bonny was 100% legit. She lived like 300 years ago. And then, like, she just disappears from record at one point, right? And so, like, I imagine, like, maybe she ended up on just some, like, plantation in the Caribbean or something, and just like lived out her life, not knowing that 300 years later there was gonna be like a really cool comic written about her and her exploits, right?
Right.
That's
Yeah.
that's
And they there's competing records too. So some records say that Anne Bonny died in a firefight when pirate hunters caught up to them. Others say that she didn't die and was captured and then said she was pregnant to get out of die. Yeah, there's so many conflicting notices about them. And then you have to also look at like some of the recorded history of Anne Bonny and Mary Read comes from somebody who might not have been a real person,
right.
and was writing under like an alias. And I'm trying to remember all the weird things about this person where like nobody could find a record of the person that actually wrote this book.
Right.
And so they were like, oh, well, this person, we think he was actually this other pirate. So he may have made all of this up. So nobody knows. But it's kind of fun to play with that, I think. Like
right.
I like where fact and fantasy kind of meet. I think that's an interesting place to be working from.
And again, because there's so, I mean, I assume this is not where the book is headed based on what I've read so far, but the next thing you know, they could all wake up and be mutant superheroes, right?
How'd you guess that?
There's context clues, honestly.
Somebody send you an advanced copy of something, because that was a secret.
Oh, sorry. I didn't. Spoiler alert, guys. No, but with that said, I do have a personal question about the book. In, I believe it's issue 2, Biff the pirate kind of slide something into Anne's drink. What do you know? What I mean? Did you even like think? I mean, did you think about like, oh, this is what it is? Because like, I was like, what is this? Not that I'm like trying to poison anybody. It just, I was like,
right. That's what somebody who is trying to poison somebody would probably say. But
I'm just exactly. But no, with that, I'm one of those idiot like consumers of like of like comics and movies where it's like, well, if you don't spell out that detail for me, I'm going to be mad about it. And I never get the bully pulpit where I could be like, well, what was that, silver bullet that you used there? So since I have that opportunity tonight, I'm going to like, do you know what it was? Cause I would sleep better at night.
I don't think we thought specifically about it, though we did give a lot of thought to how Mary was going to save her. Like that was a pretty extensive conversation between myself and Craig about like, do we want her to like mix some kind of saltwater drink and make her like drink it, or we were trying to like at some point I think we were Googling like how does somebody make another person throw up, which I don't recommend anybody ever Google.
No.
My Google history is pretty cursed, so yeah. Don't go through that. But yeah, my mom's biggest complaint about the book is there's too much spit and vomit. So
that I'm not a mom. I mean, I'm a dad, but like but it's pirates, right? Like I think like the spitting thing is like kind of goes along with it. Like they're gross, they do gross stuff. Spitting's gross,
exactly.
Right?
Right.
So speaking of your mom, this is kind of interesting. I've never been able to say this to a comics creator before, and so I'm gonna say it now. Your mom is a gem. She's such a sweet lady.
I think she might be watching, so that's good.
So for anybody that is at home and has watched Coliseum Forum, the way this typically works is we Coliseum, we've been around for 37 years. We have a really great relationship with most of the publishers. So we can go to somebody like Ross Ritchie or Kat Salazar at Image and say like, hey, who wants to talk to us? And typically they're like, well, you can talk to this person. In this situation, it was kind of like a backdoor. And because it's an Image book, we probably could have talked to Kat and then like got to you, but your mom is a mega fan and comes to our Coliseum New Tampa location and buys a bunch of copies of your book. And at first I think we were all like, man, that lady must really like Stephanie Phillips. And then it was like, oh, you're her mom. Okay. That makes sense. Because like issue number 1 on an Image book, 6 copies makes perfect sense. On number 3, what are we doing?
Oh, she's a special kind of collector.
Right.
You saw the wall in her house of all of my comics hanging up on just one wall. It's pretty impressive. So if I'm ever feeling bad about myself, I just have the benefit of being like, Mom, send me a picture of my wall or something.
No, that's amazing.
Yeah. She's awesome.
Yeah, no, she is absolutely the coolest. And so it was actually great the way we did this. Man Among You number 3 had just come out. And she was there to pick up her 6 copies, and she's like, "This is my daughter." And I was like, this book is awesome. And so I was like, hey, and we actually had a Coliseum forum playing in the store because I'm a little bit vain. And I was like, this is my show. Do you think Stephanie would do this show? And she's like, well, give me your email. She's kind of busy. And then I got an email from you, and here we are. So this was getting this Coliseum forum set up was a lot different than the way we've set up Coliseum forum in the past. So I just wanted to share that story with everybody because it was fun. It's been a fun ride getting here. So with that said, we do have some questions from some of our viewers. One, you broke somebody's heart this evening. You basically told them Santa Claus wasn't real when you mentioned that Jose Gasper wasn't real. So they, you hurt them, you wounded them. And then somebody wanted to know, in your research for Man Among Ye, what were some of the books you used to guide you?
That's a great question. I was looking to see if any were sitting around me. That might be one that I have to post because I'm not sure I remember offhand. One of the things I did was do like a search on Google for any book that referenced them. And then I kind of just went on Amazon and I went a little crazy. And one of the reasons I can't remember a specific book is because I bought every book I think that has referenced them for like a very long period of time because I just wanted to know every version of what people were saying about them before going through it. One of the books was, I think, Black Flag, which was more about pirate hunters and like the end of the golden era of piracy. So it was a little less focused on them specifically and more about the time period. I think that one was my favorite just because it was ended up being a really entertaining read to like consider why people were choosing piracy and about the time period, and that really influenced how we set the stage for Charles Vane and Rackham and the pirate hunters trying to basically coerce pirates into giving up piracy by offering them money and land and just saying like, you get a royal pardon, which I think we see kind of come to a head in issue 3 a bit. But a lot of that was based on things that were actually happening at the time, which was like, all right, well, we're not really able to like just shoot all the pirates. There's a lot of them. So maybe if we offer them some money and land, they'll just stop being pirates, which I appreciate the plan.
So at the risk of alienating other creators that are doing pirates books, I personally, A Man Among You is the best pirate book that's out right now. I mean, like bar none. It looks amazing. The story has been fantastic so far. One of the reasons we're doing this is we have, the first volume of the trade comes out in January. So we're only on issue 3. I want to take a second to advertise the book. If this sounds entertaining to you, if you guys have not picked this up on the stands, we do have it at all Coliseum locations. If we are sold out at a Coliseum location, let us know. We will get a copy for you. It is definitely worth your time in the read. But with that said, why pirates? There aren't a lot of pirate books on the show. I mean, is that why, or did you grow up like, big on pirates, or like where does this start?
That's a good question. I started working on it a really long time ago, which is I think kind of funny that it's probably one of the oldest comics that I've been working on. It just took longer to come out in the timeline of things, like finding a publisher to work with. And when Top Cow kind of asked, like, what else do you have to work on? In my mind, I was like, well, I have this pitch from a long time ago. Pirates are, I think, really difficult because Disney has just done so much with pirates that it's hard to kind of carve a space for this within the genre that, seems different or unique.
Right.
I was pretty surprised, but we have an amazing editor at Top Cow who just advocated for this book from the get-go. And we, I think, wanted to take a far more historical approach, which Disney will do supernatural and things like that. And one of our attempts going into this was we want it to be pretty straight pirates. Even if we diverge from some of the written history, we want the world around it to be really meticulously crafted to be as authentic as possible. So even if they do interact with some characters that are fictitious, those characters are really steeped in history of what was going on the islands or, with the pirate hunters and the crown. So we still tried to create a universe that I think was a little bit more historically accurate. I wasn't there when they created pirates, so I'm not entirely sure what the people on Pirates of the Caribbean did for historical research. And I've did a lot too, but going into a comic book, I think we did a lot too with the visual. I know Craig has done a ton of research on clothing and
Oh
ships,
yeah.
and yeah, so
No, I mean that definitely shows through, and it like you at the end of each issue, you kind of have a little tidbit that kind of expounds a little bit more on like the history or the setting or things like that. And that was one of the things you talked about. I think it's either issue 1 or 2, with the ship, the masthead.
yeah,
I believe it. What is it? Artemis, right?
yes, yep.
Yeah, cool. My memory is working today. And like why that was important, why you guys kind of went that direction with it, and it's like those are the kind of details that like remember I was complaining about the poison earlier. I like when that you pointed that out because like for me I was just like yeah it's a cool pirate ship, but then like once you pointed that out in the blurb at the end I was like okay that has a little bit more context now. That's really cool. I appreciate that you guys have done the footwork to like add those sort of details. They're very self-serving. At one point, Calico Jack. This I guess this is in the record at some point, but again, this is all very who knows. They did have a ship named William, and I'm just gonna go on record and say it's a very very good name.
Yeah, and he definitely did. I don't think we named the ship that they're on. No, we did.
Yep.
The ship they're on in the beginning is supposed to be one of the other large ships that he commandeers at some point. But in terms of design, we did a couple things different, like the masthead,
Yep.
because we wanted it to be really symbolic. Like I couldn't find any mention of what the masthead would have looked like on his ship, so we we went back and forth on designs for it, and I just was like, I remember the myth of Actaeon, and he views the goddess bathing, and he's not supposed to see her naked body. And so she turns him into a stag and makes a bunch of dogs hunt him. And so the masthead is Artemis with the hounds, and she's relatively unclothed in it for a reason, which, in pirate tales, there's a lot of like warning to those who enter kind of thing.
Sure.
And so we wanted the first page of this series to just be like, here's Artemis naked with these hounds, and she'll send them after you. And that was kind of our warning for entering. So we did take some liberties with the ship from there, but the liberties we took were very specific and for a specific reason.
So now your co-creator and your artist isn't here, but I do want to give him a shout out there because there's a scene, and I don't want to spoil it because it's kind of a big part of like setting up the big story we're in right now in the book. But they're in like a tavern, and I got to be honest with you, the art is fantastic to the point where like I was like looking at it and I'm like, man, that place stinks. Like you just know just by looking at it that place smells horrible. Like it smells like ammonia and like fish and just absolutely terrible. But that's the kind like I mean that's the detail that's in the artwork that kind of conveys that. You're just like, yeah, that I don't want to go there.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to shout out the art. It's very nice.
Great.
The book looks great.
And the details are pretty amazing in those scenes. They're
yeah,
really
absolutely. Now you did say something earlier, and I did want to touch on it, and then we kind of moved away from it because we started talking about your mom and things like that. I mean, how many different approaches did you take to the throwing up scene before you got to the actual like, hey, this is we're gonna do it this way?
Maybe 3-ish. Like that one was on the table, but we were also trying to think like what would be in a bar that could be used to make her throw up. Does she need to transport her somewhere? Like I was kind of reading about like herbs or things that could induce vomiting, which again, not the best research that I've ever done before. Especially if you have a weak stomach like I do, and it's just like read a web page and like gag a little bit. And but we figured at the end of the day that one would be probably the quickest. And I think most people have this like common notion of like, that's a quick way to make yourself throw up. So I think it would probably be on hand for Mary to be like, oh, okay, I can do this. Though she does hesitate for a moment because it's pretty disgusting to try to make somebody else throw up. So there's definitely a moment where I think she kind of looks around like, what else could I possibly do here? And then it's kind of resigned to, I guess I have no other choice.
So, and as a writer, as a creator, so we talk a lot about this on Coliseum Forum when we're talking to writers and artists. It was like, what's the process like? And we don't actually have to actively talk about the vomiting scene, but like when you're sitting down and like you're writing about a bunch of pirates in a stinky tavern, or now we're on a sloop, or like, what is your process like? Are you like actually there, like, you building these places in your mind as you go, or is it just like, kind of colorblind and you're just like, yeah, I think it looks like this, and then your artist kind of picks up the slack? Like, what's happening there?
I think all of them are a little different. Having a good personal relationship with Craig, it's definitely very collaborative. Like kind of throwing some ideas at him as I'm going. Things like at the beginning of issue 3, you see our new character Iris, and she has an axe. And that's another thing that was pretty heavily discussed back and forth, which is what weapon do we give Iris? What do we want her? And like, what is that weapon going to symbolize for her? I think at some point we had given her a gun, and we just didn't like that. Like, we wanted her to be kind of this brute force that's like, you are not getting through Iris. And she's a very different kind of fighter than Anne, who I think is this kind of like stealthy, long sword, maybe dagger, like definitely stab you in the back kind of character. Iris is going to stare you in the face while she uses an axe. Like that's
Yeah.
kind of more her style. But we really wanted to nail that down because it becomes a part of who that character is and how they interact with the universe we're creating. So, before starting, there's usually a lot of discussion with Craig about like, how is this going to work? Is this what we want to appear in the artwork? Because once, we draw an axe on one page, we're going to have the axe pretty much the whole way through. So making those little decisions, it seems so minimal in the book, but they actually ended up being things that were discussed so heavily, at least with the art team, about like how we want to portray that character and what they're holding. The boat that they're getting on, we researched pretty heavily like what kind of boat they would be able to sail on their own, which is I did like crew, I think, at some point, but I'm not very sail savvy. So I remember like being in Buffalo. I think at the time there was some kind of sail regatta going on,
Yeah.
like hundreds of sailboats coming in, and I was like, well, then I'm gonna go there and just watch sailboats for a little while and see how people are like moving rope or operating these boats. It's a hard thing to ask somebody to draw as well, so we have tried to be really clever about while Mary and Anne are getting the sails ready, you're really watching Iris, because at some point initially we were going to go through the whole thing, and then we were like, I don't know that anybody wants to see the intricacies of this as much as they want to see Iris being amazing. So,
Right.
So it's a lot of those kinds of decisions, and also thinking like, what is Craig going to draw really well? It's definitely going to be Iris with this axe, like going at it. And that's not to say he couldn't draw amazing scenes of putting up a sail, but the more active scene just felt so fun that we kind of wanted to cut away and go to Iris and maybe not go through like not show off the fact that we went and learned how to put up a sail.
So I will say this, as a fan of this comic, and comics in general, I promise you, the way you guys went, you guys made the right call. Because as interesting as it would be to have like, a written, illustrated instructions on how to steal a sailboat, crazy lady with an axe, like, that's way cooler. That just will always be way cooler. So yeah, no, definitely. So I want to shift gears because when we talk about Coliseum Forum in the stores, and you obviously you have your fan base, and one of your fans would be, who I big fan of myself, would be very angry if I didn't ask this. So Harley Quinn, let's shift gears and talk about that for a little bit. Obviously Future State's been announced. I don't know how much you're allowed to say, but could you tease us a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So Future State will run from January to February, and it's a line-wide event where this figure called the Magistrate has come into Gotham, and they're basically setting out rules of no masks, like whether you are Batman or Harley Quinn or the Joker, it doesn't matter who you are, you're pretty much outlawed. It's kind of like a Gotham is fed up, and this person has kind of come in as this saving grace, and it's a more futuristic take as well, so we're going into the future for this. So there's a lot of technology that will be new to Gotham City, and basically Future State is how all of these characters react to the Magistrate and the Magistrate's people in Gotham City. So obviously Harley Quinn is going to have a slightly different reaction than somebody like Batgirl.
Right.
Harley is a little bit spunkier. And so for Harley, she is captured by the magistrates people at the beginning of the book, and Jonathan Crane, Scarecrow, is reformed by the magistrate, and he's now working for the magistrate. He's given up the mantle of Scarecrow in order to help the magistrate bring in other costumed people around Gotham. But he has decided that Harley, kind of as she flips between good and bad sometimes, is like the exact right person to help him catch other people. A little like Hannibal, like, Harley can help him get in the mind of
Right.
Professor Pig or somebody, and it's like, well, how do we capture him? And you kind of have to psychoanalyze Pig to figure out, how are we going to bring him in? And the Black Mask Gang as well will make an appearance throughout those issues. So it's kind of about, how is Harley going to gain her freedom? Is she actually going to cooperate with Crane? And in a lot of cases, Harley, I think, smashes her way out of problems, and in Future State, she's kind of stuck. So she can't just smash something and get loose. She has to really be smart about how she's going to get free from the situation.
So, first of all, I'm excited for Future State. But I mean, this is a different take on Harley. I mean, we did have Old Lady Harley previously, but I mean, this is something different. And I think my biggest question, and if you can't answer it, I understand, but I really hope you can. What kind of Harley are we looking at? Because there are some definitive runs of the characters. You've got like Amanda Connor and Suicide Squad, and just Harley, and then Old Lady Harley. There's all these kind of where did you draw inspiration for this version of Harley that we're going to see?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest inspiration is probably personal. Harley and I both have PhDs, and so that's something that I think I can bring to Harley. That's, obviously she's always had the degree, but I think sometimes it's forgotten. It's even forgotten in the world of Gotham because she's kind of funny. Like she's got acid wash skin, and she's got a hammer, and she was the Joker's girlfriend.
Yeah, I was
like,
gonna go anarchist psychopath. Besides, kind of funny. Like those are.
Right. Yeah, and people forget that she's highly intelligent. She is a trained psychologist. She's got multiple degrees, clinical hours, like, this really professional background
Sure.
that I want to bring into the character. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to set a trap for Harley, kind of, that she couldn't just solve by fighting. And of course, there is fighting and smashing because it's Harley and that's fun. But I wanted to give her kind of other scenarios where she had to use her expertise and kind of bring that back into the fold of Harley Quinn.
So, essentially, first of all, I didn't realize you were a PhD, and I'm sorry, I somehow did not know that, and now I don't even feel qualified to talk to you anymore, Doctor Phillips.
It's very new. I actually defended my dissertation like 2 weeks ago, 1 week ago.
Congratulations! That's incredible. I mean, that's absolutely incredible.
Now that I know what Harley went through to get the degree, I'm like, oh, that has to be like.
No, I get how she ended up where she's at.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. And I think I told an editor once, like, I wrote a scene for Harley and I turned it in, and I was like, and this is not me projecting, and then an asterisk, and at the bottom of the email, it's just like, I'm totally projecting. So I think it gives me a really different perspective on Harley. I love every run of her. Like, Amanda and Jimmy are absolutely incredible creators, and to kind of get to write a character that they did this amazing run on, it's like, I want to pull inspiration from that and Sam Humphries and Paul Dini, to have this really spitfire kind of character, and then just, what is my twist on her? And it's probably going to be something a little personal to my relationship with academia that I think would have been somewhat similar as with her relationship.
I'll be honest, I was probably like an 8 in excitement, but after like that whole little soundbite, I'm probably at a 10. That sounds really cool. That sounds awesome.
And the art is incredible. I'm working with Simone DeMeo, who's currently doing the Boom book. We Only Find Them When They're Dead.
Yep.
And yeah, him bringing Harley to life, it's just like, it's active, it's really cinematic, and I think it's gonna look a little different and unique from other iterations of Harley too.
So let me and this is kind of a failing on my part, but Future State, aren't all the books sort of like an anthology book, or are they going to be kind of like your story's going to run through all the Harleys?
Some of the books are anthologies. Harley Quinn is not. Harley Quinn is
Stephanie Phillips, Dr. Stephanie Phillips.
yes. Yep, Harley Quinn is not an anthology. I think there's 5 books that are not anthologies, and then all of the rest are.
By the way, I could not do it, so I'm going to ask: are you going to start getting yourself credited as that? Because there's no reason that you absolutely should not do that.
I have not. I have not. I don't know that I will. It might be something that lives on like a Twitter bio, but no.
Yeah, see, this is why I could never. I just couldn't have any sort of fame because I would have to flex at every possible like. Yes, I am Dr. William Flake. Thank you very much. Like I couldn't be Billy anymore. I'd have to be Dr. William at all times. Like it's not Mister, it's Doctor. Like I've had doctors do that to me before. Like, hey, Mister, no, it's Doctor. Okay, okay, Doctor. I would have to be that guy, even though I hate those guys. Um,
Would you get that free, you'd feel that. Yeah, and it's kind of fun to give those two perspectives too, with like Crane facing off against Harley. You got Crane is very much, it's Dr. Crane, thank you
right.
very much, and Harley is just like, she could care less. She's Harl's or Harley, and at some point we do run through a bunch of her nicknames, and at no point you know Dr. Harleen Quinzel is so rarely used for her, that it's kind of fun to just bring that back to the forefront and be like, no, this is Dr. Harley Quinn. So
Are we gonna get a scene of her like back in the lab coat with like the bun and the glasses, like very like classic, like Paul Dini kind of like Harley Quinn, or
not yet, no.
okay.
But she will definitely let you know that she's a doctor.
So, I mean, at least recently, I mean, there are strong female protagonists in your books, right? But jumping from like a future story, like a kind of a, an Elseworld future story at DC writing Harley Quinn, and then all the way back to the 1700s with, Anne Bonny and Mary Read, like how do you compartmentalize those two things, like jump around between like those two wildly different settings?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's not easy. Honestly, it's a very practical answer to that, which is just like parsing out time to get back into those mindsets. Luckily, having Harley and everybody really excited about it and really great editors involved, it was very easy to slip into that mindset and kind of figure out what I was doing. And once you kind of get going on it and get a little more comfortable with like, oh, I'm in Gotham and this is awesome, and she's going to interact with Black Mask and Scarecrow and things like that, like realizing that like, okay, I grew up with their voices, I know what they sound like, and I know how to bring this to life. It's a really different thing than going and being like, I can make these pirates do literally whatever I want. Like there's history that I'm pulling from, but at the same time, like I've already established that we will go into fiction,
Right.
pieces of the story. So having kind of far less rules, I guess, in this very open world of Anne and Mary, they both offer, I think, really fun challenges, and it's being able to go back and forth is just about really giving myself the space to like get back in the mindset of I see I've got a new label. Awesome.
So I actually I had a joke set up for that, but it's okay. It's okay. This is probably my favorite question to ask creators, because this is my favorite thing to talk about my customers with as well. And I think this is kind of the thing that kind of unifies all of us, either creators, retailers, customers. What's your entry point into comics? Like where does pre-doctorate Stephanie Phillips find a comic book and you're like, yep, this is dope, I'm going to do this one day?
A lot of it goes back to the animated series with Batman. Just like that was the thing that, for a 90s kid seeing that and being like, oh my goodness, like I want this. It led definitely to reading comics and reading Batman, and being really fortunate now to be working with DC and writing characters that I grew up with. Is just some days I'm like, do I really get to do this? Was this a joke? Like, am I on punked or something? But that novelty is definitely there, and it's really exciting to get to do that. At the point that I realized I wanted to just try to do it, I was in grad school already. Like I think I'd started the PhD, and I think there was just a realization that I had never decided what the endpoint for this was. Like, most people go on to be a professor, and I just wasn't sure that that's what I wanted, even though that's the typical end game
Right.
for the degree. So at some point, I was like, maybe I should just try to see what other thing I could be doing. And I knew somebody that was working like selling comics, like personally, just at conventions and things like that. And went with him to a convention and ended up just meeting some creators and getting along really well with the writers and artists that I met. And, people like Rick Leonardi, who really encouraged my career. And, being able to meet somebody that you're like, I love your artwork. And he's like, you should do this thing. That's a pretty good confidence boost to have those people in your corner. And
Absolutely.
yeah, so I just decided I was going to go do it. So I wrote a comic script and just started going online to find artists. And that was kind of the entry point from there.
By the way, we have a request that we're supposed to talk about nuclear family.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
um, tell us about nuclear family.
I'm very excited about this book. I get to work with one of my good friends and an amazing artist, Tony Shasteen, on it. And we are basically doing a Philip K. Dick inspired, kind of like a what if. So it's loosely based on some Philip K. Dick short stories about what if Russia did nuclear attacks on the US in the 50s. So it kind of spins into the family, when their house is attacked, they end up in an alternate reality or an alternate timeline of going down the path of, if Russia had attacked the US with all these nuclear bombs, here's what the outlook would look like for the US in the 60s. And it is basically about a family trying to make their way back to their own reality, if that even exists, or trying to figure out what is going on. And it's dark. It's very Twilight Zone-esque, and a little bit more history thrown in there, though of course we're again playing with it because it's definitely a what if scenario. And Tony's work is gorgeous. Like I don't know, I think I made the joke earlier that like Tony could just draw walls and I think I would buy the book. So we're really fortunate that I have this amazing collaborator on the project, and Tony and I have wanted to work together for so long, and so this is I know we're both really excited about having that chance now.
I have to ask because like I mean I try to keep up on the solicitations and things like that. How many irons do you have in the fire right now?
Oh
That
boy.
and like and here's the thing, every one of them sounds awesome.
Yeah, a lot, and a lot that haven't been announced. So actually, next month, early December, there will be a lot of announcements coming for things that will start up in March. And not being able to talk about those things is very difficult, but there will be some really big announcements in December. So people will know how I've been spending my time for the last little while.
Well, here, we'll go ahead and turn the camera off, and then
Right.
you can go ahead and just tell us. Yeah, it's safe now.
Of
No,
course.
that's fine. No, so if you are a Stephanie Phillips fan, definitely tune in early December because it sounds like there's going to be some really, really cool news coming out. Obviously, hopefully we'll see that in like previews and some like solicitations and things like that, right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. Oh, let's see. We've got some customer or not customer watcher questions. How did you meet the amazing Tony Shasteen?
Yeah. How did I meet Tony?
Yeah.
We got placed next to each other at a convention in South Carolina, and it ended up being, what conventions are sometimes. I always like conventions, but they're definitely more fun when you have an awesome table mate. And Tony was right next to me at the convention all weekend. We are giant Star Trek nerds, and we just kind of went away from that being like, we have to find something to collaborate on, and whatever it is. So we rolled through a couple different ideas of what we wanted to make, and then an opportunity came up to work with Aftershock, and we both jumped at it because we were like, oh, we get to work together, of course. So yeah, Tony's incredible, and he is making me look very good on this book. So
Yeah, I mean, you do a very, very good job at it on your own with your writing. I mean, I this is something I this is a kind of a personal view. I think comics fans, like, there are like two crowds. Like, you've got the art fans and then like the writer fans, and I definitely fall into, like, I'm a writer fan. So, like, when I'm talking about a comic, I'm like, yeah, Brian K. Vaughan. But then you got, like, people that are like, no, but that's Fiona Staples books. You know what I mean? It's like, you got your art guys and your writer guys. So you do an amazing job. I'm actually a huge Philip K. Dick fan. I'm super stoked about Nuclear Family because it almost sounds like Man on High Castle / parentheses Cold War edition. So that book's gonna be amazing, and I'm super excited to see what's on the horizon for you, especially since there's gonna be a bunch of announcements next month. Um, yeah, that's awesome. I obviously you've got like 4 million comics that you're writing at this point. It's getting late. I don't want to take too much of your time, but thank you so much. We do have one more question before I let you go. A few of our Tampa customers have asked me this. They were like, "Hey, is she ever going to come visit her mom again?" And my answer to them is like, I assume so. They seem to have a very good, healthy relationship. And it's like, "Hey, do you think she would swing by the Tampa store?" And I was like, "I'll ask." So next time you're home, you maybe come see us.
Yeah, absolutely. I should be coming down for most of the month of December, if not all of it. So,
Hey, don't get them
I know my
don't get
mom
them that excited. That's way too soon. They can't handle that.
I know my mom is watching this, being like, she's coming down in December and never leaving. So,
She is moving home.
yep, she got me a rental car to come down to Tampa, and so far I don't have a rental car to come home to Buffalo. So,
It's like one of those. Oh, we'll figure that out later. But like
right, yeah,
later never comes.
right. That's not important.
Well, at least if you're home, you have access to great quality comic stores.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you guys
Dr.
have been.
Phillips.
My mom was so excited to be like, "Can you please email Billy and do this?" And
Oh, I was so stoked when she was like, she's like, "Can you just give?" And I didn't have any business cards with me that day. And I was just like writing it on a piece of paper, like, it's just Billy at. Well, I'm not gonna say my whole email, but, um, but yeah, no. Thank you so much for doing this. You've been absolutely wonderful. We look forward to everything you're working on, plus the things that are out, like A Man Among You. Guys, swing by Coliseum of Comics. Issue 3 is out now. We could probably track down those 1 and 2s for you. And if you missed it, the trade is out in January. So get that on your subscription.
awesome.
Thank you,
Thank you
Dr.
so
Phillips.
much.